Hi, we are Group 6, the Fabulous Five, and this is Ken Fortenberry. So in our story, we have a few characters. The first one is Ken Fortenberry, and then we also have his wife and 3 kids. Also is Jimmy Gable, the sheriff, and we'll introduce a few other characters later as they become more important. After graduating from University of South Carolina, Ken had held several different positions at newspapers. Growing tired of the corporate rat race, Ken decided to pursue his dream of owning a newspaper. Soon after, Ken discovered an 80-year-old paper in South Carolina that was for sale. It wasn't until 2 months later when Ken could finally take over the paper in McCormick. Ken quickly discovered McCormick wasn't at all the town he thought it was. McCormick led the state in unemployment and illiteracy. It often had the lowest student test scores and lowest per capita income in South Carolina. It was Ken's impression that the city was full of drunks and bad check writers. Racist behaviors and attitudes were not uncommon in the town of McCormick. Ken decided he wanted to start writing real news stories rather than the chicken soup articles that had filled the newspaper previously. Ken started by going to the sheriff's office one day and asked for the daily arrest log. The sheriff, Jimmy Gable, refused. The arrest log and sheriff office financial records are both public record. Ken began to do his research as he felt something was not right. Ken uncovered several bad checks the sheriff had written on the office account to cover his personal financial obligations. Ken wrote a story with his findings. The story did not go over well for Ken. His kids started getting bullied and harassed at school. Eggs were thrown at his house, threatening phone calls were made, and the advertising revenue at the paper was declining. Sheriff Gable sparked a federal investigation. The night before Gable was indicted in federal court, a homemade bomb exploded outside Ken's house. The county coroner, Jack Cowan, took over as an interim sheriff. With the sheriff election coming up, Jack Cowan was trying to secure his job. George Reed was also running, and Jack Cowan was planning to bribe George Reed to drop out of the race. Ken learned the specifics of the sting operations and caught the money being handed over on film. The election between Reed and Cowan was held despite the bribery charges against Cowan. Reed won 1,228 to 1,120. After being elected, Ken checked into Reed's past. It was hardly what he wanted to see. Reed had a criminal record and had failed the state-required sheriff's test twice. Ken suspected that Reed was illiterate. Ken had the story ready for this Thursday's Messenger. If Ken had called you and asked you for advice, what would you tell him?
Created using Powtoon.